Hey everyone, I hope you are all doing well. Oh my goodness, so much has been going on in the world, has it not? I'm super excited for this video actually because there is so much that is just here. And when we start to see things like this happen, you kind of start to see them as like over and over, like one by one, and they just kind of pile on each other. So I think this is going to be a really great video. I'm just going to ask the Lord to just protect our time here together, that God, that you would go before me as I go to reveal the things that you have shown to me. And I just pray, Lord, that all of the pieces come together and eyes open and all of the connections can be made in order to show people, the truth and uncovering of the things that are taking place. So I want to just jump right into it. There's a lot. If you guys can see my tabs right now that I'm sharing a screen with you, there is quite a bit here. So I want to make sure we have time for everything. So I'm going to start off. So as you know, one of the biggest things in news headlines right now is the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. One of the things that I thought that was really interesting just about this trial in general is the fact that we're only getting sketches, right? Like we just had this Rittenhouse case where it was crazy televised. There was a whole Fox News special, and I think a lot of that also was in part distraction to some of this. That was actually all the the jurors were being prepared to be chosen, all of the things kind of trying to keep this quiet. Well, now apparently, they don't want to televise this trial, and again, that kind of starts to ask questions, right? Now, what they're doing is the court's been releasing sketches of the trial. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of this stuff today. I want to talk about, before we even get started, there was a case called Latham versus 1953 Trust. The 1953 Trust is the Jeffrey Epstein estate. If you know about Jeffrey Epstein, right, he was the one who, was found guilty on the charges brought against him for child prostitution. And basically, had been rubbing elbows with all these high profile celebrities and politicians. And now the lid is really being uncovered in some of this. Well, hopefully, right, we'll see the full truth of what's going on. But Maxwell, is her trial now is happening as a co-conspirator in all of this. Now, I wanted to talk about this case because this is going to be really important. Now, there was a case that was brought, and this is it. So this was this woman here, Charlene Latham, and she brought forward a complaint against the Jeffrey Epstein estate. Now, this wasn't the only complaint that she brought forward. There were others, and it was brought to the South District Court in New York, and the judge threw out the case. Basically said that it was frivolous, that it was baseless. The claims were baseless. However, being a researcher, I don't just go off of what, some judge who could, I'm not saying this judge is bought off. I'm not, but it's potential, right? I wanted to see what the allegations were. And so I want to show you what some of those allegations were for this Latham versus the 1953 trust. And of course, everything, I'll put in the subscription for you, or everything I'll put in the description for you. So that way you can actually see all of the links to everything, okay? Because this is a lot of research that goes into this. So yeah, frivolous, right? Not having any serious purpose or value. Well, if you actually, as we go through the allegation cases of the case, you might think that it has some value, especially considering that a lot of it really is right in alignment with a lot of what people who come out of the entertainment industry say to be true. So Latham, there's another one versus Trump. Okay, so Trump and Epstein, you're going to see some of the connections here. And a lot of this is coming forward. So some of the plaintiffs that were involved, it was the parents of this girl and this girl herself. Okay, and this is all public documents that you can take a look at. When this was filed, this was actually just filed. There were some filings that took place starting back in 2020, all the way up until the seventh file here, which was recently January 5th. I mean, about a year ago, right? 2021. But the case, as far as I know, had been dismissed. And we're going to look at that. Okay. But before that, it's really important to see what were some of those allegations that took place and who are some of these names of some of the people that are named in these allegations. So um, there is a little bit more information here. So if you take a look, okay, I'm going to show you just what are some of the things that the plaintiff brought forward. There's a handful of things, but the first was that the corporate defendants, so there's a list of names involved, including specific corporations, and the corporate defendants named or identified as does are accused of aiding and abetting in the facilitation of the unlawful surveillance, which spying, stalking, and repeated drugging, abducting, hostage taking, and kidnapping for the criminal intent of sexual assault, abuse, extortion, and exploitation in the same capacity as any person named as defendant, and in their capacity as corporations providing support to the criminal enterprise of the defendants. There was even things considering of money laundering. Okay, so here was one of the allegations that was brought forward. Over the course of decades, the defendants established a lucrative but sociopathic criminal enterprise where the defendants engaged in decades of human trafficking, sexual assaults, and various abuses, including financial and economic exploitation, drugging for abduction. Okay, so some of the things that you're seeing, this human trafficking, okay, this is talking about the sex trafficking, the child trafficking. This is all the stuff that's kind of really being uncovered right now. But this was a very serious allegation. Again, I don't know if this person would ever show up as somebody who would be brought forward, but this, again, was initially the case initially was thrown out. But these are some serious allegations that do seem to be in alignment with a lot of the things that we've heard of. It also says that the defendants, and the defendants list goes on. There's like high profile people that you know about, and we'll talk about some of them as they've been coming out through the mainstream media. But basically, that some of those defendants engaged in sexual harassment, extortion, physical torture, psychological torment, and revenge, basically to the parent for her refusal to sell the child. So, as you guys know, with some of this stuff, we're going to talk about MK Ultra. We're going to talk about abductions. These children that are abducted, they're drugged, they're basically forced into prostitution in order to appease the elites. And that's what a lot of this is uncovering. Okay. Now, in some of this, okay, the action of the court, because it was the defendant's conspiracies to traffic and exploit for criminal sexual intent targeting the plaintiff, occurred when she was a minor child. Okay. And they state that she was approximately 13 years old when they tried to sexually assault and exploit sexually for financial gain. Okay. So this is basically these people being connected to prostitution. Now I'm going to go through this document fairly quickly because I want to get back into the mainstream news so you can kind of see what some of this is being laid on, because in the mainstream, they just give you the pieces. All right. So another piece of this document, the events known as sex parties hosted by the now descendant Jeffrey Epstein around the world for abuse by elite, high-profile, wealthy purveyors held at all of the defendant one's properties. Okay, so this is directly stated against the Jeffrey Epstein estate. This is against Jeffrey Epstein. Now, another one who came in, okay? And they said at the age specifically of 13, another one who was named as being a part of this was Ghislaine Maxwell, okay? So as you guys know in the trial, Epstein, Maxwell, they go hand in hand. So one of the addresses that was linked in this complaint had to do with 9 East 71st Street in Manhattan, which is Jeffrey Epstein's, basically his house that he had in Manhattan where some of these parties were taking place. Now, some of the people that were involved in sexually assaulted by various parties in attendance, specifically Harvey Weinstein and Sean Carter. So you guys have already heard this probably in mainstream news that Jay-Z was one that was named. Rockefeller, when we talk about the Rockefeller records and the connection between the music industry and basically making these high level sales were really what's being sold as children. And these are the things. Harvey Weinstein was a convicted sex offender. We're going to look at him as well. He was somebody who would claim to bring you to stardom and to put you in all of the things. But that there was child molestation that was taking place. Okay. Now for some of you who are familiar with MK Ultra and MK Ultra programming, what this complaint outlines is some of what of the MK Ultra handlers would have been responsible for doing. And so this says Jeffrey Epstein conspired with Harvey Weinstein and Sean Carter to initiate a system of stalking, surveillance, drugging, abducting, and trying to physically control, abuse, or financially exploit and extort the plaintiff one. So basically, it's this high enterprise criminal network, right? Where it doesn't matter, like if you go against what they want to do. They're ruin not only your career but your life. Okay, so this is really what all of this is about, and it goes pretty deep, right? It goes into every area. We're talking about, these are things we said in the past, even considering, the FBI, the CIA. Like, there's dirty cops, like, it's everywhere, right? Politicians, judges, right? So a lot of this corruption, especially through the brotherhood and sisterhoods of these societies, they do their due diligence, okay, in order to continue to push themselves forward. But so this says specifically that this person was aboard the Lolita Express. You'll see pictures in the Epstein case of this private jet called the Lolita Express, and there would be people who would meet with these child prostitutes as well, and they would go all around the world wherever they wanted to go. Lavish parties, especially you're going to see France is a big one. France plays a really big part in a lot of this. You're also going to see France, New York. There's Epstein's Island. Then you have Florida as a big part as well. Okay, so that pedophile island, which was Little St. James Island, this is where they would go, and there would be massages and yeah, okay, and that's some of the stuff you're going to start seeing in the news, right? The table and the toys and all this crazy stuff. All right. So basically, there was a sophisticated criminal network established among and in tandem with all the defendants to traffic plaintiff one for their abuse. Now, another piece of this, how did this abuse work? So how did they do it? And what level of control is there? Now, when we're talking about the system, we're talking about everything from entertainment to corporations to just moving forward, like every area of grab and reach that these big corporations have, TV, media, like this whole area, politics, whatever it is, even going down to the creation of laws, right? All of these things have connection. So it says that basically what they did was facilitate employment contracts, lucrative partnerships contracts such as record deals, fashion industry ventures, and other assorted goods and services, such as company perks like luxury cars, housing, real estate gifts, and large sum of cash disguised as record advances, and other quote unquote legitimate business deals for decades. Okay. So these would be the legitimate deal, but in reality, what they're really selling you is child prostitutes. Okay. That's pretty much what this complaint is saying. Part of what they did was the spying, stalking, the surveillance, breaking and entering, interference, sexual assaults, battery, financial exploitation, physical abuse, emotional harm, psychological torture. Like, this is all Satanism. This is all exactly what they do in order to split the mind, in order to program people. They take them at a very young age, and this is a lot of the satanic ritual abuse stuff, guys. If you don't know this, then you got to do some more research. You got to ask the Lord to show you and expose these things, because they are taking place, and this is the kind of stuff that the Lord is not happy about, that he sees those hidden things. But it says included that sexual harassment, lewd conduct, kidnapping, human trafficking, extreme abuses for decades. Okay. Now, part of this had to do with the lucrative career contracts in professional sports, entertainment, other industries were forfeited in exchange for or consequence of redressing the crimes targeting the plaintiffs, biological children, including but not limited to the specific plaintiff who made this case. Okay. They would even steal ideas, unlawful use of trade secret, intellectual property infringements. So basically, they would steal their creative or artistic rights. Like, they would give them these contracts, but really they were being sold into slavery. Okay. And I remember something came out, with Dylan and Cole Sprouse, and they talked about this with the Walt Disney Company. They talked about how, they had this really great idea and Disney turned them down, and then Disney went and stole their idea. So this is the kind of stuff. And if you watch and you listen to these child celebrities who come out, you're going to see little nuggets of all of this pretty much coming together. So the harassment, it goes on to include gaslighting and other types of torment and things that they would subject these victims to. Okay. The harassment includes creating pedophilia, again, where they were recorded in various states of undress as minors. Now, what I think is interesting about this, again, especially when you have some of these people, like you think of like the Kim Kardashians and what's her name, Vanessa Hudgens, and all these people who had these these photos that they took of themselves leaked out as a form of control, right? You start to go off, you start to go whatever, they're going to rein you back in, they're going to release some kind of blackmail on you. That's part of the satanic agenda. That's what they do. It's part of their arm of control. Child prostitutes to clients. Okay, these are clients that these are politicians. And this is all the stuff that's being uncovered right now. Basically, there's a spirit of refusal to stop the conduct of their interest, and they wouldn't. This was ongoing for 30 years. They would not leave these people alone. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what some of this looks like. And again, unfortunately, this is something that was thrown out. So, will this family get justice? I don't know. I sincerely do hope that they do. And again, the news media isn't talking too much about it, which is unfortunate because we should know what's going on. But they are giving you bits and pieces, and if you kind of put all the pieces together, you'll have a chance to see. So what we're going to do now is I want to go through a little deeper what some of those complaints were stating. Okay, so as we go through, keep an eye out for some of the names. Okay, so as you're seeing in the mainstream news, I want you to know to be in alignment so you know what's going on. So this article was taken. It says how feds say two Long Islanders helped Jeffrey Epstein run a sex trafficking ring. Here are some of the names that you're going to see as being involved, and two of them, and part of this complaint were Darren Indyke, who was an attorney from Glen Cove, Long Island, with being indispensable captains in the criminal enterprise. Okay, so he was somebody who was involved in the legal arm, and then you also had Richard Kahn, who was an accountant from Watermill. Okay, so again, in order to be able to hide some of this money laundering and some of these things, and to have the legal representation, these are two people who they were claiming, had part in this. So basically, when they go on to talk about this, as Epstein, a 66-year-old registered sex offender, pleaded guilty in Florida to soliciting prostitution from minor girls, killed himself in a Manhattan jail cell in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges for allegedly abusing dozens of girls over the years. Epstein's many high-powered friends over the years have included former presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, as well as Prince Andrew. So again, you can see why they may not want to have all of this come out, but these two folks were also mentioned as being a part of this. So Indyke and Kahn obtained large and frequent stocks of cash for Epstein, which based on public knowledge would have funded Epstein's cash payments for massages, code for forced sex, authorities alleged. Okay, so what they would say is a sale of, a massage was not. And so that's why you'll see that they bring out the massage table. There's some documents that have been publicly released about what that looks like and how they were sold. It was sold as this massage. But again, you're talking about pedophilia. You're talking about little ones. Okay. But it goes a lot deeper than that. And we're going to talk about just how deep this goes. So there was even a complaint that was held against Darren Indyke and Jeffrey Epstein, Richard Kahn. Okay, all of those, the estate, the administrative of the 1953 trust, which was Epstein's basically his entire estate, and the Virgin Islands government. They made a complaint against him, and I think it was removed anyway. Again, like, I don't know how much of this would unfortunately actually go forward, but they even made a complaint against him and against his estate based on some of the provisions and some of the things that they were seeing happening, some of the complaints. Okay, now, there's another woman, Virginia Guffrey, and you guys might have heard of her as well. Well, she has a book, and look, this is seriously just Google. Just go to Google, type Virginia Guffrey book, and if you want full details of what this girl has gone through, her entire book is online for anybody to be able to access and to read. And she goes into some really extreme detail about the people that she was involved with, that she was forced to basically be prostituted out to. It even talks about how she met Matt Groening, right, the guy who was the inventor of The Simpsons, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew. Like she names a lot of people. She talks about, I think she actually worked with Trump. She worked in Mar-a-Lago for a little while as well. So that just goes to show you, and that Epstein was at Mar-a-Lago quite frequently. Okay. And we're going to talk about that connection. But going back to another name that was dropped, right? Harvey Weinstein, right? He was very well known. You'll see him with lots of celebrities who, a lot of them had these mental breakdowns, right? Because of the things that they were being forced to do, like Lindsay Lohan is a really good example. But there's lots of people that he was really involved with, but that's him. Okay. He was considered a registered sex offender. This happened a few years ago, actually. But that's Harvey Weinstein for you. Okay. Why is this important to know? Okay. And what did he have anything to do? He was a film producer. Okay. So if you were trafficked to Weinstein, you had an opportunity to, rub elbows, make fancy, and potentially be in a Miramax film. Okay. Like that is the level. And for those of you who are watching and supporting Miramax, like know that you're supporting pedophilia. You're supporting a pedophilia ring. But again, this is, where this is what it's about. So this is Weinstein. Miramax film. Okay. One count of third degree rape, one count of criminal sexual assault in the first degree. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot more than one count. But that's what they ended up convicting him for. All right. So again, like look, you can even see some of the movies. These are really popular movies. Lord of the Rings, Good Will Hunting, Django Unchained. Like Miramax is huge. It's huge. So this is Harvey Weinstein. That's a name that you should know. Again, here's Epstein's apartment in New York. This was mentioned. So this was the apartment. So you can kind of just have a chance to see what it looked like. This is where people would come in and out, and like, oh, what a lovely feature to have above your door. Um, but that's it. And I guess there was a raid that they did, and they had found some quite disturbing things, like pictures, including the Pope, a lot of high level people that had been involved. All right. So if you're wondering where specifically it is, um, that's it. The Herbert and Strauss House. So you're right there in the center, right in the middle of New York. All right. So Central Park, Manhattan, right in the center, on the east side. All right. And so that's where it's at. Okay. So that's where a lot of these victims were alleged to have been trafficked, specifically to the New York arm of the home. Now, why do I have just a plain thing of Google? Well, I thought that it was really important to point this out. So, for those of you who might have heard two specific words, one of them being pizza, the other one being, the thing that you open up to enter. So I'm going to wait a few minutes so the AI doesn't make the connection, but maybe the gate. Okay, you take those two words, put them together. And that's what this, and I think it's crazy because the Maxwell trial is like going on. And suddenly Google decides to have this big, nice slice of pizza where if you click on it, it's like, oh, cut the pizza. Like, this is disturbing, rather. Okay. That they're highlighting this right now, especially in light of all of the things that are going on concerning that. Where did that get its name? Where did this infamous name it was not debunked? Again, Wikipedia. But basically, that it had something to do with this child sex trafficking ring, and this was specifically a location in Washington D.C. Now, remember, you have to remember this as well. Again, there's Clinton, again, Bill Clinton, right, with the Epstein stuff. Here's this was specifically Hillary Clinton. This was the WikiLeaks thing, but basically, human trafficking and child sex ring. Okay. So what they would believe would happen was it was this pizza place, which was pretty much like a front, and then they would use it as a place to be able to connect and to traffic out some of the children in order to go out or to be prostituted to these politicians or to wherever. Okay, it was like a basically a meeting point, right? They say, "Oh, I want to get some pizza," and when they would say that, it was code word for that they wanted to molest children. Now, why is this all of this important, especially the fact that it's a pizza place? Because they're gonna try to make like these crazy like QAnon conspiracies. Like this is just ways to try to discredit. That's what they do. when there's actual legit claims of things like this, they move to discredit. That's their role. That's their job. Because they don't want obviously to be found out. So they're going to go to extreme lengths in order to not be found out. So this is Comet Pizza. Okay. Now I want to go on to the next one, and that's why I said it's crazy that Google's suddenly highlighting pizza, right, when all of this is going on right now. I mentioned this before. Project MK Ultra. Okay, MK Ultra was basically the illegal human experimentation program that the CIA used, and the idea was right through LSD, and they used this in order to force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. So what happens to some of these kids, especially the ones that you see coming up as child stars, that they later on tend to lose it, right? Like Britney Spears on the Mickey Mouse Club, Amanda Bynes, right? Like what is happening to these child celebrities? Well, they are very much part of this child prostitution ring. Part of what that does is it creates a split in the mind through the satanic ritual abuse, through the extreme torture that they get put through. They're then programmed, and these altars are then created in order for them to be manipulated. So going back to those complaints, like this is what this person is stating, that the defendants, the people that were involved, like they were talking about Beyonce, Jay-Z, Kanye West, all of in their records, their albums. I'm sorry, not their albums, their record companies as being part of this, right? To be part of like offering a deal or offering whatever. And in order to do that, but what's really happening is these people, in order to keep going higher and higher, they have to be part of and partake in the child abuse. Okay, whether that means performing acts for themselves or trafficking for other people to do it, but it goes deeper than that. Because the enemy's not happy until he has blood, and then this is where you do get the result in child sacrifice. Now, we're going to talk about child sacrifice in a minute, so please stand with me, because I know for some of you this is probably really hard to hear a lot of this, and I understand that it is hard to stomach. But when we think about who is the god over God, and I use that as like quotes because he thinks he's a god, but using the scripture's word over the earth, when it comes to the sons of disobedience, it's Satan, it's the enemy. Like he has to get his blood, and he loves corrupting, because he's a corrupter. He loves corrupting innocent life. And there is an element, especially spiritually, that does have a lot to do with it. You'll see the Aleister Crowleys and the sex magic, and by taking, and it's actually a witch's like not archetype, but a motif, I guess you can say, that people use, or more of a trope. I don't know how you would really, but basically that it's like, oh, I need a virgin to sacrifice on the night of Halloween. Well, no, this doesn't just happen on the night of Halloween. This happens all year. This happens during high level solstices, especially now you have the winter solstice coming up. So don't be surprised that you're seeing some craziness happen. But what I did was here, just to jump back here, what I did was I created a map of Epstein's estates, because I want you to see how this would work in terms of moving people, and how it would make a lot of sense in terms of the points in which kids could be really, people could come to meet and to engage. But one of the things that, one of the defendants had stated is that there's times they would go to France, specifically Paris, played a big role, that there would be some lavish parties there. And that's where a lot of the European politicians and celebrities would come to partake, I guess we can say, in pizza. And then here, where you see the pin drops, these are all of his different estates. This one specifically is Mar-a-Lago. The reason why I only put one pin here, so you can see where Mar-a-Lago is because Jeffrey Epstein's estate was literally like a block away. It was like down the street. And they had been, very well known friends. And please don't come on here saying that Trump was trying to bust them, because if he really wanted to bust them, he would have done it a long time ago. So please don't. I don't want to see that on this channel at all. Corruption is corruption. So down here, this was the St. James home. Okay, so this is where they would go, the island, right, far away from all the stuff. And it actually makes sense because it's funny that's right near Dominican Republic specifically because Dominican Republic has a very high level of prostitution specifically for children as well. So it wasn't just American kids who were abducted and brought into this, but you also have, foreign. You also have immigrants, and they were promised life in an, lavish, not just life, but like lavish life, like record deals and becoming models and, getting sold like, hey, come talk to this producer. And they were getting drugged and addicted to drugs and they were being beaten and tortured. And it's really sad. And I just thank God for, hopefully that all this really does become uncovered because all things done in darkness become light. But even going on, so then here's New York. So we have Florida near Mar-a-Lago. We have New York, and we have St. James Island, okay, being major ports. He had another home that was in Michigan, okay, which is all the way up here. I can't say specifically like what that was for. Maybe it was just a getaway. I don't know specifically, but perhaps to be able to, to cater to his Canadian clients. I maybe just hypothesize. And the other was Zorro Ranch, which I believe could have been used more to serve, the West Coast clients because that was all the way in New Mexico. Okay, so that's how you have an idea of his various estates and the people who are brought there. Okay, and we know for what purpose. All right. So another thing that has been coming out is, who flew on the Lolita Express. That was Jeffrey Epstein's private jet. Okay, who flew there? Who went to St. James Island? Who partook in all of this. Now, I want to state something also as we're going through this. It's easy to blame just Epstein and Maxwell, but we have to remember that the clients that are being served are just as guilty to any capacity as the people who are getting rich doing it. So you had Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey were just a few that were on the Lolita Express and would have seen these things and would have in some way, shape, or form partaken in these things, basically. And so those are a few. Prince Andrew. So in Guthrie's book, she talks about Prince Andrew as well. You can read about that. But basically, there's about 1,000 trips that were made between 1991 and 2019. So this stuff is fairly recent. Chris Tucker is another one who was, you'll see that was involved. Former astronaut John Glenn, Bill Gates, right? Like these are big names, and these are the people that you're seeing, the same kind of folks that you would see that would, go join for the weekend over in California in the I think it's called the Redwoods, you want to call it. Bohemian Grove, right? It's the same stuff. They get together, they devise how to be sick human beings, and they go about it. So Trump, Clinton, Spacey, Tucker, Gates, Andrew, Prince Andrew, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., it's Hawk Perlman, some violinists, I guess maybe I don't know who that is, but Senator John Glenn, and then former Senator Majority Leader George Mitchell. So those are just a few that you're going to see. And of course, they're going to deny it, but um, there you go. So there's there's another lovely drawing there of Maxwell. Okay, so even in thinking about this, there was some celebrities. So of course, you have politicians, you had celebrities. So right now, these are just kind of more of the names that are just starting to really come out. This one was in 2020, so it came out a year ago. Other people who were involved: Elon Musk, Mick Jagger, you name it. But it seems like we keep seeing Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, Naomi Campbell. In Guthrie's book, she also talks about how she went to Naomi Campbell's party in Paris, or I think she was in France, and Kevin Spacey, Bill Clinton. So the people that are coming out, like these are people that had been involved, that or alleged. Or I guess I have to say allegedly involved, but because unfortunately we're not seeing convictions of them. But anyway, again, going back to this idea, like, I don't know if you guys remember this, but like even Kim Kardashian, she had a sex tape, right? Like all of these young people have these things. And why do that? Like, part of the complaint was that they would force them to engage in these acts and being recorded, right? Because then they would blackmail them. It's part of that torture. Again, here you go. Here's Trump there, with Epstein. Again, like the guys, they're friends. I know what kind of drama they sold you. Oh, they were doing this, that, and the third. But if you wanted to be anybody of anything, you were partaking in this, okay? To some degree or another, whether it was turning a blind eye, providing, some kind of support in some way, but far more than you might think has involvement. So I thought this was interesting because this was the complaint that we just read. This tweet from Ray Bullock, and he said, there is a woman, Charlene Y. Latham, that boldly ties Jay-Z, Beyonce, Kanye West, T.I. and Tiny of the current black music entertainment industry to Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, and Ninth Satanic Circle of the Sacrifice of Children. I tell you why she shouldn't be dismissed. And then people were asking, what's happening with the case, what's going on. And I thought this was a really good connection. Like I was saying before, it's no coincidence Jay-Z's Rockefeller record label is named after an Illuminati bloodline, the Rockefeller family. Like when you talk about the connections and the involvement that people have, it's a lot deeper than I think people think. And now they say, oh, it's conspiracy, but no, it's not. Like all of this stuff just connects. It's just I don't remember who said it, but he said, the world is made up of a lot of obvious things, that are observable, that people are not observing, and it's just hidden in plain sight. But I wanted to come back to this concept of child sacrifice. And now, on a spiritual level, by the things that are happening with these children, really it should be a level of outrage. And it is something that seems to be so shocking that it's almost like I don't want to believe that that's true. But we don't do ourselves any favors by shrinking back and not becoming aware. Say, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? No, well, you're going to be made aware. You're going to stop, supporting these people. You're going to not get behind them, because that's where a lot of their power lies, in the fact that, that there's a level of ignorance that people carry, and a level of just dismissive attitude that people just don't care. And that's the problem. We are not called as Christians to not care. Like you have to care, like the Bible talks very clearly about caring for these issues, defending the ones who can't be defended, the oppressed, the widows, the children, the low things of the people. It says the low or the weak things of the earth are the things that, that we should be to a level coming alongside, right? So, child sacrifice is the ritualistic killing of children in order to please or appease a deity. So, in this case, who requires child sacrifice? Satan. God does not want you to sacrifice your child. There was a man who was sacrificed, who lived a sinless life, and that put the end to all sacrifices. Okay, but this is a thing. And the Bible very clearly tells us that there's nothing new under the sun, and this stuff still does continue. Just because you don't see it, because it's not popular anymore, doesn't mean it's not happening. And so there is, if I go down, it tells you about the different cultures that you have seen this the most. But I thought it was interesting, and it made a lot of sense here to think about even Abraham, right? When God said, sacrifice your child, he did it. He wasn't like some crazy sick person. Like this was normal. Child sacrifice was actually very normal culturally, for a long, long time. And so when he was told that, he was like, okay. And God said, he said, no, don't do that. You don't have to sacrifice your child, right? It was the ultimate test of faith. But, God's heart does not want to see these children sacrificed. Like these are his creation. But the reason why this wasn't some really odd, strange request is because it was normal, for people to sacrifice their children to a deity. Okay. Now, specifically, I wanted to continue on, and come back to this point of, who are more of these people who are involved. So we talked a little bit about Weinstein and Weinstein's connection, right, through Miramax LLC, or Miramax Films. Um, Another one that you might see have a connection is the Walt Disney Company. Okay, you're seeing little things like this, and these are just little Easter eggs to try to show you. If you ever heard of Fritz Springmeier, he has some really great material, and he talks a lot about, the Walt Disney bloodline and where that started, and how they are very much responsible just as a company for trafficking children, and for specifically for creating child pornography. Okay, so like beyond pedophilia in terms of molestation, but actual pornography created, child pornography, that they were a big part of that. And that's why you have a lot of these celebrities who come in and they go into Disney, right? Like that's their specific entrance in. Um, and we'll talk about Nickelodeon as well, because that company was also part of um, these complaints that are made by these defendants. But basically, two Disney World employees among 17 arrested in Florida, child sexting, sheriff says. So it goes on to talk about, 17 people arrested for being a part of that. But, I feel like this is just ways of being able to give those little those little Easter eggs, but people don't put together the full gravity of it. They think it's a one-time off event, and it's not, right? Disney manager living vicariously through child porn images. Okay. Brett Kinney, 40, faces child pornography charge. I mean, this guy is just taking the heat for everything. He's just the scapegoat. But this is something that is commonplace when it comes to Disney as a whole. And this is why I do have a big issue when I see, believers who are like, I love Disney and I can't wait to go to Disney. But when you know what they do and you know what they stand for and how they're slowly indoctrinating your children into witchcraft, I still can't get behind it. I'm sorry. You see all of these young girls like Zendaya. She's a big one now. Like she's shot up to fame. She came in the same way, and I can almost guarantee that some things happened to this poor girl. She's not quite there in terms of a breakdown yet, as far as we know. But Miley Cyrus, right? We know she went off the rocker herself, right? Hannah Montana there. We have Hillary Duff. I think she was actually fairly okay, as far as I know. But yeah, you got Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, like all of these child stars who came in at a young age, and some of them who were smart enough to get out of those contracts and get out of all of the abuse and the stalking and everything that takes part in it. Well, praise God for that, because a lot of these child stars have these contracts and basically have sold their soul, whether physically or just metaphorically. But they really there's control over every asset of their life. And another piece that's involved in that, that's just the television arm, the movie arm, production. But then, even in Hollywood, you have the voices, right? You have Universal Music Group. Universal Music Group has their main location in the Netherlands, and they have two pieces: Universal Music Group, the United States, okay, which does all of its stuff, and then you have the International, which does all of Europe and some Asian countries in Latin America. Okay, so you have like the differences there, but really, Universal Music Group, they're if you are not part of Universal Music Group, you are not on the A list. Let's put it that way, right? You got Lady Gaga, you got Ariana Grande, Andrea Bocelli, like you have, and then they believe that they have a social responsibility, and this is why I said if you don't think that the music that you're listening to has any kind of ramifications in terms of what it's teaching you, then you're really sleeping. Um, they have what seems to be like these nice things, like I want to give to this foundation, work to do this, work to do that. A lot of the people that are on the chairs of these boards, they're really just giving money back to themselves. Like you could do a whole video on that in itself. But who they are brands are and labels. These Universal Music Group was also part of this complaint that was brought up. They were listed in as part of the complaint. Okay, but you can see all that is associated with them. Okay, it's literally every label that means something. Def Jam Records, Island, right? Motown, Universal. So they give you like Universal Studios, Virgin Music. Okay, like it goes on and on. Def Jam Records was also part. Um, was complained against as well as being a part of this. All right, so Young Money, some of you might know Young Money Records as well. Okay, so these are all of them that are connected to and with Universal. Another giant here is Vivendi, which is a media company. And again, they are out of France. Like I said, you're going to see a lot that has to do with Paris or has to do with France. And they're a conglomerate known for television, film, video game, book publishing, communication tickets, and video hosting services. So again, going to the entertainment industry, you're going to need all of that. Gameloft was associated as well. Gameloft also being a French company, as we said, a lot of connections to Paris and to Paris, France. Other parts of France too, but French video game. So when you think about all of the backstories that you see in the predictive programming, yes, they're in video games as well. Okay, because they have a connection. Jean-Luc Brunel, he's a French model scout. So if you wanted to abduct a child, put him into modeling and tell him, hey, you'll be a model. You had this gentleman here who also not only was known with finance, he was financing by Jeffrey Epstein. So you can see he already had that connection. There's pictures of him there, even with Ghislaine Maxwell. And not only did he have the offices, it's funny that he had offices in New York and Miami, right? Pretty close to a lot of what Epstein was doing there, New York and Miami. Although he wasn't in Miami, he was, near more like Epstein was more near like Mar-a-Lago, near Trump's estate, but also in Tel Aviv. Okay, so right there in Israel. Good Music was another one. This is Kanye West. The Islands Epstein music group, part of Universal, again, being a part of this complaint, which is why I have a really hard time when, people say, well, Kanye's a believer now and he's all that's okay. Yeah, so let's wait and see the fruit. And, just saw him recently praying along with Marilyn Manson, a man who literally rips Bibles and burns Bibles on stage. Like, guys, come on. David Boyes, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is another one who complaints have been filed against, and he has, connections with. Well, it says that he led the U.S. federal government's prosecution of Microsoft. So he was against Microsoft. So he's a really good one there for the politicians. But basically, he also had connections with Virginia Giuffre and Harvey Weinstein. Okay. He was known for his aggressive and sometimes unethical tactics. All right. So there's your little backstory on that gentleman. Marcelo Clore. Okay. Somebody who would have definitely been a part of the technology entrepreneur business, the corporation part of this, who would have taken part, who's another name that you may see come out. But specifically, he had SoftBank Group Corporation. And the reason why is when we look at SoftBank's investment is Uber. Okay, a nice, really quick and easy, simple way to traffic some kids around on foot or driving, right? Again, like when you talk about the intricacy of this network and the people that are involved, their names and people that you're like, wow, like I would have never even thought. Viacom CBS was complained against. Viacom CBS is, the other part where you have Disney doing their thing. Then you also have Nickelodeon, right? That's where Ariana Grande came up at. Nickelodeon, MTV, all right, to infect the older folks, and then of course just BET, and CBS as a whole. So that's some of their assets. Okay. Now, this I thought was really interesting. Virgil Abloh would have been complained against. Now, I don't know, I can't say with certainty if, maybe he was going to crack or say something he wasn't supposed to say, or if he was going to get caught or something. But he was complained against, and we find out he's actually dead now at 41. But he was a fashion designer, and he had a lot of connection. I believe it was with Louis Vuitton, and yeah, he was a luxury industry designer who apparently died from a rare cancer at 41. But I want you to understand, he died on November 28th, the same day that the jurors are being picked for the Maxwell trial. Like suddenly of a rare cancer at 41. I just thought that was strange. And he was somebody who was also complained against. Okay. Ghislaine Maxwell. Here you go. Began November 29th is when they went in to begin. So I just put this here so you can see the alignment of dates. The final examination of jurors, okay, on November 29th. The NYPD was complained against as well, as being part of it. Some of them did absolutely nothing, or they helped and assisted in the criminal network enterprise. And the reason why I say it's crazy, but if you guys remember a movie that came out back in 2008, it was called Taken. Now, a lot of what the elite do is they show you these things in plain sight. And this movie, and why I kept stressing about France being a part of this, was because France specifically was mentioned in this movie. So actually, this young girl and her friend, they go and they vacation in France. So some of those points of interest, Florida, New York, France, huge. Okay. I'm guessing that France has to do with the European arm of it all. But the backstory, they go to France. And when they go there, basically they get invited to a party, but it's not an actual party. They get abducted. They get basically hooked on drugs, and they're then prostituted out. And when all this happens, then you have the father who's like an ex-CIA or something, and he becomes like a vigilante hero, and he finds his daughter, but his daughter was literally being sold to high profile people. Again, what you believe is entertainment is them telling you, yeah, we do this, and you're paying us to watch this, and this is actually what's going on. And I just wanted to remind us all of this movie that came out back in 2008, and they had a series on it as well. Might be an interesting thing to go back and watch in light of this case, and see like some of those parallels. But now I do want to switch gears a little bit, because I believe all of this nonetheless is to say that it's funny to me that all this is taking place while suddenly we have this crazy wild variant that has taken place. Okay. First case has been detected in the US. All right. This came out December 1st, right as the Maxwell trial is underway. It says that the first case was in California, which, by the way, the person was vaccinated. And I'm not giving you any medical advice, so please don't take my medical advice, because what do I know? I'm not a doctor. I'm just a researcher. All right, so don't do that. You put the pieces together for yourself. Omicron variant. This person was vaccinated, and they apparently breakthrough case, apparently South Africa on November 22nd, apparently. And so now they're going full out with this and saying, we're going to fight it. We're going to do all the things. At the same time, New York declares a state of emergency. This was December 3rd. It was declared, I think, the 1st, and it wasn't to go into effect until the 3rd. And I think it's going to January 15th. Again, because, who knows how long this trial is really going to last. But I think it's interesting because the trial is also taking place in New York. Okay. And what better way, apparently the governor says, we're not going to put any kind of lockdowns. But listen, at this point, you guys, the people are so trained that it's like you can just snap your finger. And I felt like that's what happened at church. Like, I walked into church and everybody had a mask on, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is crazy. We've all lost it. But no, seriously, like, it's just like, it's like the control. It's like, okay, well, you know what to do, right? You've been primed. You already know what the next step is, how to go. So a state of emergency. And because apparently there's been, at first it was 2 cases in New York, now it's 5, because they're gonna push that as a spread, in order to say, hey, guys, go get your boosters. Yeah, go get boosted, because when you go to get your boosters, of course, what's going to happen next with the boosters. Now they're creating a new class, guys. Guys, it's not enough to just be vaccinated. You're now the under vaccinated. Wait, you don't have your booster? Oh, you might as well join the unvax, because you're under vaccinated. Like, this is the new terminology, guys. It's a never ending thing until you're plugged in enough to plug into your AI and to merge. Omicron, let's talk about it. Omicron comes from the uppercase O. O actually means omega. We talk about the large O. There's alpha and omega. Alpha, the beginning, omega being the end. And this is actually how, God refers to himself when Jesus comes in Revelation. He says, I am the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Like, this is how he describes himself. So what I thought was interesting was Omicron specifically is actually a lower, it's the little O. And all I could think about was, the prophecies that talk about the little horn, or like this little god, or this little horn, this little thing, like the small. So that was the first connection that I made in thinking about O, but specifically O in the Phoenician is ayin, and ayin actually means an eye. And so this is going to get a little bit deeper. It also means nothingness. Okay. So I believe a lot of this has to do with, coming for your soul, coming for your consciousness. Like, when you talk about the eye or the state of consciousness, it's believed about the pineal gland. That's why you always see like the third eye, or like this here being like the area in your brain where the seat of consciousness rests, is what many believe to be true, and especially in the Eastern philosophies, why they put so much emphasis on the I. But ayin meaning nothingness. Now, what is their goal? Their goal is to create nothing within you. You can be that host, so like basically it's trapping your soul. Go trap your soul in the metaverse, go upload yourself. Like, that's where you're going to be, and that's where you think you're going to be happy, but it's not even real life. I mean, it's crazy. It sounds like sci-fi, but the truth is stranger than fiction, honestly. But Busta Rhymes, the prophecy will be fulfilled. This was a screenshot. I covered this when it came out, but you see their eyes are white, like they're possessed. They are just shells at this point, right? Ghost in a shell. They're just shells. There's no life that's actually in them, because once you receive that mark, like you're done. The mark of the beast, you're done. There's no returning from that. There's no going back. You're a host basically. And when you see their eyes, and I saw this in meaning nothingness, it's like destroying the soul, or like, I don't know, but it just some kind of something with the soul. If you guys have a little more clarity on that, that'd be great. But I know that there's definitely a connection there. I wanted to look at the Greek here. So we have delta. The symbol for the delta is a triangle, which delta actually means a change or a difference. When it comes to mathematics, it means a change or a difference. But when I think about specifically the delta symbol, okay, it's a triangle. For some, it means it actually can represent a door. Okay. And what I thought instantly of was I thought I had the picture up. So it was basically if you ever see the triangle with the circle inside, it's also symbolic like this. Um some people think this has to do with, like, oh, it's like Harry Potter, it looks like. No, this right here is actually it's an occult symbol. Okay, so you think about the triangle, delta, Omicron. Okay, and this actually is symbolic of Solomon's ring, Solomon's triangle. And the belief is that this was like the tool for conjuring spirits and demons and containing them. So when we talk about trapping souls, this is where this is going. Okay, trapping your soul. If you've seen the Omicron, the nomad god, this has been covered in a lot of other channels, so you can actually watch the trailer for this. He goes on to talk about Asherah, and he goes on to talk about, oh, you're here, your soul has been trapped. All the souls here are trapped, and they're gray and withered because their energies are being feeded upon, in order to keep alive the whatever sick entity was part of that universe. But anyway, and it's called Omicron, but you should definitely check this out. Okay, and you'll see the connection with the video. Yeah, there you go. There's Solomon's triangle. Okay, so it was like the magic of Solomon when it came to trapping demons, but in this case, the connection and trapping souls, I guess. The word evocation means the act of invoking a spirit or deity, and that's what this was called. It was basically had to do with evocation, or also bringing forward. Okay, when we talk about bringing something forth or bringing something forward, it reminded me of the Travis Scott concert that everyone was talking about in Astro World, which I didn't cover. A lot of people covered it, but I'm just waiting for the right connection. And if you look at his shirt, actually, it shows these people walking through a door and being changed into these little devil-like creatures. This is what we're talking about. This is talking about mixing, with the seed of the serpent. It's changing yourself. It's taking on the quote unquote DNA of the gods and morphing into something that you're not. So you're walking in one way and you're coming out another way. It's the transformation, the big change, okay, that they're preparing for. Now, I wanted to show you total solar eclipse of December 4th, 2021. So basically, there is a total solar eclipse that took place on December 4th. And why does this matter? The Bible says we don't teach astrology here, okay? But astronomy is important. The Bible says that there will be signs in the stars and in the sky. And I thought this was interesting because it led me to learn about this. We have the winter solstice coming up, especially with everything going on. And the reason why is because in the spirit, right, there's things happening. Well, apparently, in 2021, on the day of the solstice, of the winter solstice, on December 21st of this year, they're expecting a really big meteor shower to take place. And all I could think about in a meteor shower was the scripture that talks about in Matthew, where it says, the skies rolled back and the stars fell from heaven. And I just can't help but thinking like a meteor shower kind of looks like that. It looks like stars just falling to the earth, right? And I think you're going to see a lot of changes coming up, especially in this year. But why is this significant? It's significant because of the alignment that's going to take place. So basically, on Friday, December 10th, you're going to see an alignment that you haven't seen before. Now, last year, I think it was Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus were aligned, but this is the first time that the three are aligned and the moon. And why is this significant? Jupiter usually has a connection to the king. We think, or I guess you could connect in terms of Trinity thinking, right? The Father. Saturn, usually the sun or Saturnalia was the worship of children. It was focused on children. Saturn also being Chronos, also being time. And then Venus usually is connected to the mother goddess in thought. But the moon also connected to like supreme deity. So when you talk about the worship, there's the worship of the sun, but there's also the worship of the moon, and the moon is like the moon goddess. So for them to say that on December 10th, all of these are going to align, and then shortly after that, there's supposed to be a meteor. There was the one meteor shower, and then there's supposed to be meteor shower on the solstice. And in the same month, there was a total lunar eclipse, which is also very rare. So I feel like I'm not an astronomer, so I don't have all of the information on this. So if someone else does, I just put it out there, and if you can add on, that'd be awesome. I would love to partner with somebody in this, but I wanted to show you all this because I thought that it was going to be, super important just in understanding, a lot of the things that are happening, the signs that are taking place. God is really letting us know that things are starting to happen, and we're, the world really is moving forward and seeing prophecy being fulfilled. So I wanted to share all of this with you, and just continue to be wise, to be vigilant. Go forth in love, peace, boldness, and perseverance to just keep preaching the message of the gospel, keep introducing people to the love of the Father, just keep bringing, what God has gifted you to do in this earth, and just do it and do it well. But I wanted to share all this with you because, needless to say, we are in perilous times, and, but God's got us. And I hope that some of this was able to shed some light on some questions you might have had in terms of connections. Please share this video, give it a thumbs up, comment. I love hearing from you guys. I have since been home since the mandate. So as you guys know, if you feel led in any way to give, I did also put down my Venmo down there. So, please feel free to, if to sow into what I'm doing. This does take hours of research. I've never really asked for anything in the past. But I do want to start dedicating more time to doing this, to researching, to compiling the information and getting it out there for you, because there's so much confusion. But there doesn't have to be. And I find it a great joy to serve you all. So, if you feel it in your heart, the Lord saying like to sow into what I'm doing, I'm open to receiving that, where in the past I probably wouldn't have been, but God's working with me like to be open to it. So I'm gonna go put that also down in the description below. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. God bless you and take care.